Have you felt a slight sense of irony in that half the England team have fallen off their perches and are out injured, and you've never been fitter in your life?
Yeah, I think it is interesting. It does give me an interesting perspective on how these things occur, because, you know, like I said, for all the will in the world, I've been through 6 years and followed every piece of advice, followed every possible second opinion, third opinion. I've rested, I've not rested, I've mostly not rested, but I've gone out there and tried to prepare in any way just to get rugby, and found some interesting injuries at the end of each path, and to be able to step back and say sometimes there is nothing really you can do about it. It's a contact sport in which guys play over and over again and put their bodies in some really tough positions and don't receive anything, and all of a sudden one time it just happens, you know. And I guess, to be honest, the story at the moment, I think, when you look around and of recent the professional, is that it happens to most people at some point in their career. There may be a few people walking around relatively injury free, because I've taken some of theirs, and that's not something I'm certainly not worried about that. You know, I think the more people that stay fit, the better. It's fantastic, but there are times in a contact sport where you'll find yourself just in a position, and in an unlucky way you might pick up a bit of a knock, and it can happen several at a time. It can happen, you know, hardly any over one season, but at the moment, you know, there's just been a couple, and it's been unfortunate.
Just how good is it to be back in the England squad and back playing against Australia? Yeah,
I mean, all being well, if I'm involved in the autumn games, it'd be an amazing feeling, being back in amongst an environment like this, with the players, with the squad, with that kind of network in place, which is the infrastructure of really supporting you, looking after what you desire as a player, looking after your basics, so that you're launched towards your best, is kind of a great feeling. You know, there's still a long way to go, and we know that, but at the same time, you know, we're in an environment now where the guys are tight together, and there's a buzz about waking up and moving around the place, and this place has held some good memories for a lot of us, and I think being back here and amongst a squad that has that kind of togetherness and energy, and those aspirations, those aims and ambitions is kind of what makes rugby special, and what makes you glad that, you know, over the period of 6 years worth of injuries, that, you know, if you were going to come back, this is such a good time to do it.
Now, fair play to you, Johnny. I've got to hand it to you. You've got the French media, in just 8 weeks of playing in France, eating out of your hand. They say you're playing the best rugby of your entire career. Any truth to these allegations?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest. Maybe they've just not quite long enough memories to remember when I was playing back in the day. But it's been interesting. It's been a hell of an experience going over there. And what's really helped has been the opportunity to be a new guy in a team and have to search quickly to try and understand the game, to try and understand, after an injury as well, for 10 months, to understand other players, to try and get the best out of them, to negotiate difficult situations on the field, to bring about the right result if you can, to bring players together, to understand momentum swings in the game, where the energy is, refereeing, all those kind of tough elements. To have to do it on the run has been a real challenge. I haven't got it right all the time. I haven't got it right maybe quite a lot of the time, but nevertheless, by searching for it, you're learning quickly, and I think having a team around you that supports you again and a coaching staff that allows you to go out there and just give it a go has meant that, you know, I've tried and succeeded a few times. I've tried and failed, but nevertheless, that learning has given me a chance to go back out as a better player each week. And so, I don't know if that's maybe a bit over the top, if not a lot over the top, but at least I know that I'm getting better week in, week out, and that's exactly where I want to be as a player.
And that's exactly where you need to be against Australia a week on Saturday, because you're going to have a whole back division you'll hardly have ever played with any of them at international level.
No, exactly. I mean, that's in a way, it's an interesting aspect of it, but at the same time, it's kind of exciting to see these guys. I mean, you have to understand, people like Ugo Monio actually went to school with a few years down from me, unfortunately, but they're also you know, the likes of Danny Kerr. I mean, if these guys are selected, obviously just certain guys that are around at the moment. Shane Geraghty, guys playing fabulous rugby, but also guys that I've been watching for quite a long time now. You know, just purely through being injured and not being able to be on the field. I've watched guys, and I've watched them play some fabulous stuff. I've watched them in international shirts. I've watched them this season already, and it's a joy for me to have the opportunity to be around these guys. You know, if I'm selected alongside these boys, I can play and just enjoy feeding off their experience and feeding off their form at the moment. I think people forget that whatever age I am now, and however much older I am than these guys, it doesn't change the fact that in training I'm watching how these guys are doing things. You know, this is how the youth of today are doing it, and I want to know what that's like. You know, I want to keep my game moving forward by making sure I combine my experience with the fabulous stuff that's going on at the level where these guys are taking the game a little bit further.
I can help you there with how old you are now. This will be your first match playing international rugby in your 30s. How does that feel?
Exactly. Yeah, it reminds me of playing alongside Mike Catt, Neil Back, Will Greenwood, Jason Robinson maybe, you know, Austin Healy probably. A lot of guys I played in that time, and I'd love to take a leaf out of their book and saying that these guys were hitting their peak at that time. I think, you know, in terms of where they were physically, they'd found their recipe, if you like, the perfect recipe for what gets them right on that peak limit, you know, before a game. They'd found that the experience, the combination of the two, understanding game plans, understanding teams, players, you know, swings in the games, everything. And I think, you know, I'd like to just keep going like those guys did. And like I said, Martin Johnson, over the age of 30, all the guys. So it's all those sort of guys are role models for me right now. You know, I'm kind of in between the young and the older. I'm looking to the older guys for the experience, and the younger guys for the bit of the buzz and the extra energy.